Hello everyone, and welcome to yet another video in which I rank all the films that I saw in a given month. This time, that month being March 2019. Now, this month was a particularly mediocre month for film, at least in my opinion. There were a couple that I did miss, which include Gloria Bell, The Mustang, and Dragged Across Concrete. Otherwise, the ones that I did see, mostly, I don't know, they just passed through me without any emotional effect whatsoever. But I do want to let you know what I thought about each and every one in terms of how they rank from worst to best, with the best one being my movie of the month for March. So here you go, and enjoy the video. And what is possibly the most disappointing movie of 2019 thus far, Captive State fully encapsulates what it means to squander potential. Given the fascinating premise, solid cast, and talented director Rupert Wyatt of Rise of the Planet of the Apes fame, I hoped for a surefire success. But what I got was a film whose characters and stories passed right through me, so much so that I forgot that I even watched it 15 minutes after it ended. It would be an act of beating a dead horse, or elephant, I guess, if I was to say that Disney's live-action remakes are becoming even more disposable and pointless with each consecutive release. Considering how Dumbo turned out, though, the point has to be made again. I hate that Disney is making these. For those of you who told me that how much they enjoyed this, all the power to you. I find it perfectly fine to disagree with me, and I encourage it since such breeds honesty and genuine discussion. I just can't ignore how I feel about the ineptitude regarding this film's production and what it represents. Since this visually stunning but otherwise very bland animated film was over in less than 80 minutes, I can't really say that the experience of watching Wonder Park was particularly offensive. At least Paramount Animation tried something original, yet it all came across as perhaps trying a little bit too hard, because the message is about as ham-fisted as you would expect, and it doesn't help that the story is neither meaningless or entertaining. Once it arrives on home media, it may act as a passive time waster for very young kids, but I'm afraid that it will never rise above that fate. Kevin Costner and Woody Harrelson acting together as the two former Texas Rangers who helped hunt down Bonnie and Clyde just sounds like an awesome idea, and Netflix seemed to be fully aware of that. You'd expect for there to be enough upper middle-aged snark and energy to result from such a pairing, right? Ultimately, it just doesn't work as well as you would hope, though. That's no knock against the actors by any means, they just happen to be stuck in a boring, lifeless movie. I may be overrating Unplanned a little bit when comparing it with the films that were placed lower on this list, but in all honesty, I wanted to give this movie a fair enough shot despite the toxic reputation of PureFlix among the cinephile crowd, and after having seen it, I will admit that it has plenty of problems that people on any side of the abortion debate could identify, yet it still has a good enough production to be passable, and I appreciated the well-rounded portrayal of the lead character Abby Johnson. Despite not being that good overall of a film, I applaud PureFlix for having the guts to not only make a movie like this, but to also produce a fairly competent one. Again, this is another movie in which I fully support those who had a great time with it. For me, however, I found Captain Marvel to be quite an underwhelming entry into the MCU. While it is very passable and is watchable enough, there are enough various issues I have to the point where the overall experience doesn't really work on an emotional level for me. Marvel Studios has had some particularly strong films come out over the past few years, but despite what Brie Larson and Samuel L. Jackson did to bring along some entertainment value, this problematic and messy installment in the franchise isn't one of the high points and hardly required viewing prior to Endgame. Director Neil Jordan is certainly no stranger to horror and pulpy suspense, given that one of his most famous works is Interview with the Vampire. Greta certainly has all the marks of a director hoping to make a solid movie, with excellent cinematography, some fun editing tricks, and enjoyable over-the-top performances, particularly from French darling Isabelle Huppert. Even so, the experience was a bit too slight and predictable for it to be anything particularly memorable. If you want a solid psychological thriller with some mentally bonkers characters, you may be better off looking elsewhere. Even though the Western genre has not been the same since the 60s and 70s, I'm nonetheless happy that we keep on getting new ones. It's the type of film that surprisingly stays relevant for an age when news of violence is continually broadcasted from every source you could possibly imagine. And in that way, The Kid does offer some intriguing insight, for it defies any notion that the prototypical cowboy hero earned his stripes because from the amount of kills he gets from his six-shooter. Still, I wish what actor-turned-director Vincent D'Onofrio offered more frequently were entertainment value, dramatic tension, storytelling coherency, and interesting frames to look at. A cliched, mostly predictable romantic drama about two high schoolers suffering from cystic fibrosis is surprisingly nowhere near as bad as you might expect it to be. It's not particularly great by any stretch, but it does deserve some credit for two very good reasons. First, Haley Lou Richardson should be cast in every single movie ever made from here on out. She represents her hometown of Phoenix very well. But perhaps more importantly, the story touches on the subject of what makes for true love when physical intimacy is removed from the question. These elements at least make for some moments of meaning and worth, so who knows? You may be surprised by 5 Feet Apart like I was. And now we come to the first film mentioned in this video that is legitimately good. While 5 Feet Apart certainly had good moments, Triple Frontier consistently maintains its quality since director J.C. Chandor successfully managed to get strong performance, well-edited action scenes, breathtaking cinematography, and an intriguing storyline out of his crew. Their work is of a considerable enough caliber to make this work, even if some of the story beats are fairly familiar, the messages occasionally come across as calculated, and the ending is underwhelming and even mildly contradictory with what came before. Still, with a cast this great and a production this solid, Triple Frontier is worth looking into for those who have a Netflix account. Speaking of Netflix, this film of theirs, the likes of which was purchased by the streaming giant after the Sundance Film Festival, is a special little film indeed. While I already have suffered great disappointment this month, actor-turned-director Chiwetel Ejiofor made up for it with the surprisingly strong The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, a true-life drama about a young teenage boy who used science to help save his village from famine. In what will surely be one of the most overlooked films of the year, this contains all of the virtues that a digestible feel-good movie would have, while enhanced by excellent performances, emotional power, and cultural value that shouldn't be taken for granted. I may not ever watch this again, but I deeply appreciated the time I did spend on the one time I did. 50 years after the historic Apollo 11 moon landing, we get a documentary using 100% real footage to tell the remarkable true story that pushed the limits of human achievement. While the film itself may not contain as strong of a human, emotionally resonant element as I would have liked, it is nonetheless worth it just as a cinematic experience. Witnessing this pristinely restored footage on a large theater screen is an absolute must if you get the opportunity. If that doesn't apply to you, though, watch this anyway, for you'll find yourself transfixed not only by the literally unbelievable imagery, but also by the simple awe of realizing that people actually got to the moon in 1969. Seeing that process gloriously unfold before your eyes is something to be treasured and praised. I could hardly argue against anyone who disliked, or at least was mixed, on Jordan Peele's Us because of the messy plot. However, I can say with a firm conviction that I'll take a somewhat problematic work of true creative vision over a forgettable, mediocre product that plays it safe, quite like the countless other horror movies that are crapped out of Hollywood on a normal basis. Us was an enthralling reminder to me that we live in an era where the horror genre is experiencing so much more affection, creativity, and care towards making movies of quality. Jordan Peele's second film was enough proof to me that his breakout hit Get Out was not a fluke, delivering what I feel to be a disturbing, timely, and entertaining work of art that will only become more appreciated over repeat viewings. Thanks again for watching, guys. Look forward to more content pretty soon. 2 videos of which are going to be reviews for Pet Sematary and also Shazam. Please check out the links in the description to check out my Facebook page, my Letterboxd profile, also my Instagram to check up on reviews for movies that typically don't get covered here on this channel. And again, thank you very much for watching and have a good one.